this webinar really is about gaining buy-in for equality, diversity and inclusion through digital badges. And when I heard about this from Graham at City of Glasgow College, I thought it was the perfect thing to have as a webinar topic. So I'm glad that you've thought that too. We've got two presenters, as George said. Graham Brewster, he is the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Manager at the City of Glasgow College. He has over 10 years experience gained within a change management role in both higher and further education. His main fields of interest are roundabout valid equality data measurement and declaration, and translating the corporate, legislative and moral drivers into best practice strategy and operations. Graham has led the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion function and supported senior management to deliver change throughout the three-way college merger process, through delivering a cohesive policy and programme of activities designed to embed ED&I in the emerging college structure and culture. Our second presenter this afternoon is Douglas Morrison, and he is head of the STEM Industry Academy at the City of Glasgow College. He's passionate about promoting equality within the construction and engineering sectors. His interests include positioning technology-enhanced learning and gamification strategies as mechanisms for developing diverse and effective workforces. Douglas is also at the moment a PhD student at the University of Strathclyde, studying technology-enhanced learning adoption in vocational education and training. So I'm now going to hand over to Graham, who's going to start in our presentation this afternoon.
Hi everybody, thanks very much for signing up. I hope we live up to that very, very impressive introduction. Okay, so without further ado, what we're going to do is we're going to go through what the visual representation of our digital badge infrastructure is first of all, and then we're going to go on discuss our journey. So we've already had a facilitator's introduction. We've had a look at the number of people who've signed up, and we're very impressed by the range of organisations and the range of functions that are actually represented today. As we've said already, there'll be an opportunity for questions, and we'll also give you a toolkit which you'll be able to use yourself to start understanding your own journey towards digital badges. And we will have 3 poll questions later on in the presentation. So, on we go. Session objectives. By the end of this session, you will have an understanding about our project drivers and the development of City of Glasgow College. We'll have identified the factors that need to be addressed in order to begin the implementation of digital badges, and you'll be given a tool to support mapping out what your organisation's digital badge might look like, and I hope that this meets your expectations. So rather than show you a live demonstration of our Connected, which is our staff's intranet, we decided to choose screen grabs just in case there were any technological problems. But essentially this is our home page of Connected, our staff intranet at City of Glasgow College. And the top half of the screen is a scrolling carousel going from right to left. And on the landing page is a tile for digital badges. And what I'll be doing subsequently is showing you the journey that a user would take when they're undergoing their own digital badge completion. So very often the user would be scrolling down the screen, so each subsequent slide will just be demonstrating that screen scrolling downwards or a link to a new page following a hyperlink. Okay. This is our digital badge landing page, and Douglas will explain this.
Hey, good afternoon everyone. What we're very keen to do in the first instance is to make it very clear to colleagues throughout the organisation, firstly what digital badges were, and secondly what we were trying to achieve through their adoption. We decided to take I suppose kind of dual approach insofar as we offered a written overview of exactly what we were aiming to achieve through the Digital Badge Initiative, but we also introduced a digital badge video which gave a more interactive overview of exactly what we were proposing to introduce, and the video itself will be played directly.
City of Glasgow College is committed to ensuring that staff are recognised for their everyday contribution and commitment to continuously developing themselves and our learners. To achieve this, we're launching a digital badge initiative, supporting our college values and behaviours. We're launching with the Equality, Diversity and Inclusiveness badge, which can be gained by meeting 3 criteria. Once the 3 criteria are successfully completed, you'll be awarded your first digital badge. This can be displayed on your email signature or social media profile. Physical badges will also be available to pin on your lanyard. By supporting the Digital Badge Initiative, you're contributing to our shared vision of world-class learning in a world-class workplace.
Watching that, it's embedded onto the page in our staff intranet, so it directly follows on from the introduction about what digital badges are. Scrolling down from the screen, staff see the 6 college values, and currently the Equality, Diversity and Inclusiveness badge is the only live badge. The next badges we will be working on will be the individual and partnership, and we'll be working on those over the next couple of months. So a member of staff would click the big blue button and then it would take them to the landing page for the ED&I badge. On this page, it has a running total of the current number of staff who have achieved the badge, and at the time of doing this presentation, which was the 10th of April, 190 staff had achieved the badge so far. However, this morning 230 staff had achieved the badge. So it presents the current number, and then there's a donut pie chart which represents the proportion of staff who have achieved the badge versus those who haven't. And then underneath that is a scrolling ticker tape, if you like, going from right to left in order of people who have achieved the badge. And then you'll see the purple text there that says show additional metrics information. And if the member of staff clicks that, it will take them to this page, which will have a breakdown of completion by faculty and by directorate. And this is the running total, and what this demonstrates is achievement across the college at local areas, illustrates early adopters, and acts as a kind of incentive and tool for healthy competition. So going back to the page, the first part really looks at what's in it for me, and we speak about the fact that we're committed to ensuring equality, diversity and inclusion across the college, make reference to the Equality Act and make explicit reference to protected characteristics, and remind the member of staff that the whole badge is enshrined by the college behaviours, which we will discuss later. Goes on to speak about the benefits for equality, diversity and inclusion, and these are presented here. We'd identified 7 benefits with reference to external research. So we looked at research from the Chartered Institute for Personnel and Development, research from the UK government as part of its business initiative, and also the findings from Stephen Frost, who was the former head of inclusion at the London 2012 Olympics, and we pulling together these separate sources, divided and identified 7 benefits and drivers, if you like, for ED&I. So there's staff, customer, decision making, productivity, reputation, legal, moral and ethical. And for many people, all these benefits will resonate, but for some people, depending on the role, certain areas might be of more interest to others. So it just demonstrates that this badge and the ED&I agenda really benefits all individuals working for an organisation, and indeed the organisation itself and the customers that they meet the needs of. Summary purple box there speaks about, in short, an organisation which effectively commits to and manages ED&I results in real people benefits, improved corporate performance, and an enhanced reputation. Scrolling down the slide, how do I actually get the badge? There's some instructions, and then you see the 3 stages of complete the new EDI online module, provide your equalities information, and pledge to be an active champion of ED&I. So the first part, complete the EDI online module. After reading the instructions and clicking here, staff are taken out of the intranet and into the student VLE, where the new module is actually located itself. This is the front cover of the module. The module was very much designed with the college in mind, rather than being an off-the-shelf package. It's contextualised, makes reference to college building and services, policies, procedures and relevant scenarios. It's much more than a compliance-driven module and very much examines the corporate and social justice drivers and reasons for ED&I. The module takes approximately 60 minutes to complete. There are a number of resources available in the resource folder at the bottom of the screen, and there are a number of hyperlinks taking the user to external websites. So I'd just like to give you a quick run through of the skeletal structure of the actual module itself. So section 1 is a welcome. It speaks about what is diversity as opposed to what is equality. Examines the reasons for and benefits of equality, diversity and inclusion, and again makes reference to those specific 7 benefits identified later. Talks about what is unlawful conduct and what is acceptable and not. Section 2 examines bias, and that's conscious and unconscious bias, consequences and solutions. So there's a real focus here upon unconscious bias, stereotype, threat, and so on. Section 3 is on the Equality Act. There are a number of slides specific to each protected characteristic, scenarios throughout it, references to college procedures and public sector equality duty and specific duties in Scotland. Section 4 examines the college commitment and staff expectations. So we firmly present our commitment to ED&I, we explain about staff rights but also staff responsibilities and various strategies we have in place for positive action. Finally, Section 5 has a quiz. Staff are required to achieve 80% to achieve successful completion of the module, and staff have 3 attempts to do so. So after completing the module, the VLE and the staff intranet will talk to each other, if you like, and it will register on Connected that staff have completed the module. It goes on to step 2, and that is about providing your equalities information. And again, we had developed a video internally in the organisation to encourage staff to provide their equalities data, and we're just going to show you that video just now.
Why does City of Glasgow College want to know your equality information when you're applying for a course or job, and where does all this information go? We want to recruit and include the full diversity of students and staff and provide a safe environment free from discrimination. We also want to do all we can to help you succeed. If a group of students or staff has lower success rates, we look into why that's the case and do something positive about it. The information we collect is confidential and linked to your enrolment or staff number. It's only ever used to make sure you're being heard and we are giving you a fair deal. We only use numbers and never names. Some people worry about giving information in case it falls into the wrong hands. However, there are strict laws to ensure we protect your details, and very few staff have access to this confidential information. There is a prefer not to say option. However, more information helps us to make things better, so we encourage you to answer the questions if you feel able. Also, if you're a student and don't feel comfortable providing this information in front of other people, you can contact relevant staff and give your details at a later date. Remember, everyone is asked the same questions, so please help us to help you. Thank you.
Okay, so you'll see after watching that, staff are very much clearly explained about the rationale and reasons for providing their information. Anonymity and confidentiality are encouraged. After looking at the video, we go on to the next part where staff are asked to log on to MyHR, which is our online HR portal, and provide their equality information. So for each protected characteristic, and something that's really important here, even if somebody doesn't necessarily have a protected characteristic, so for example, if somebody doesn't identify as having a disability or a religious belief, they're still encouraged to go on and tick none. And as we've mentioned, people are encouraged to be open if possible, rather than choosing prefer not to say. So after going on to MyHR and updating their information and saving it, they come back to this page here and they tick the checkbox at the bottom. The third part is arguably the easiest part to do online, but perhaps the most challenging and the part which requires most active participation, and that is pledging to be an equality, diversity and inclusion champion. This pledge is very much based upon our college behaviours for ED&I, which are be fair, respect others and consider differences, and appropriately challenge unwanted behaviours. So we looked at the actual behaviours itself and determined, well, what could this mean as opposed to what does this not mean? So the orange, the pink and the blue bar are all hyperlinks, and by clicking on each opens up additional text. So for the orange bar, I pledge to be fair by treating people as individuals could mean about implementing accessible learning materials training, making reasonable adjustments or catering to dietary requirements, for example. But what it doesn't mean would be treating everybody the same regardless of their needs, about giving anybody preferential treatment. It's only about levelling the playing field. And it's not about assuming people's needs are based on your own perception. So for the pink part, I pledge to respect others and consider differences. This could mean using alternatives to offensive but normalised language. So for example, saying that's absurd rather than that's insane. It might mean respecting the needs of others without questioning. It might mean actively valuing diversity and its benefits. What it doesn't mean drawing attention to difference to offensive language or assuming that all people with a shared protected characteristic will look, feel and be the same. And it's not about political correctness taken too far. The blue bar, I pledge to appropriately challenge unwanted behaviour. Could mean challenging bullying behaviour or discriminatory language. It could mean improving your and other people's understanding. It might be about ensuring you feeling empowered to broach these subjects directly or indirectly. What it doesn't mean is waiting for somebody else to challenge it, making yourself feel uncomfortable, or forcing conversations on you, assuming everybody has the same level of knowledge and understanding as you do. After reading that and ticking the box, the top of the page changes, and it changes from the running total to achieved, and your name is added to the list, and then you see the proportion of people who have achieved the badge in teaching, support and senior management team and the board of management. At the moment we're going through a period of recruitment with board of management, and after this, after we take on 9 new members of the board has pledged that they will be updating their equality information and going through the 2 other procedures and the criteria in order to achieve their digital badge, which is very encouraging. Upon achieving your digital badge, staff receive a graphical email which demonstrates that, which is the image on the left, where staff are congratulated on achieving their badge and also reminded of their pledge. At that point, they receive an electronic booklet which details what the pledge means in practice. Also, staff receive a paper leaflet, a physical credit card type card, which has the pledge on one side, and on the other side has the 3 behaviours. And they also receive a physical metal badge, which staff are encouraged to pin to their lanyard. Also, the first 100 people who achieved the badge were invited to our award ceremony. We had one at our Riverside campus and one at our City campus, and this was hosted by the Deputy Principal and then featured in the Principal's briefing and other internal forms of communication. So essentially that is how the badge looks for a user, and we thought it was useful to run through the process of achieving your badge. But now we'd like to talk to you about the journey we went through in order to get to this point, and I'll hand you over to Douglas, who will give you an overview of digital badges.
One of the things that we were very keen to do as an organisation is to recognise firstly that learning happens everywhere, both at any time and everywhere throughout the college. But we also wanted to demonstrate our commitment to ensuring that staff were recognised for their everyday contribution, and probably more importantly, their contribution or their commitment to continuously developing themselves and our learners was rewarded. The badges were introduced to support awareness and understanding of the college behaviours and values, and to incentivise staff to engage with them in a meaningful way, thus enhancing the culture further. We had to communicate that open badges were just like digital certificates that recognised and evidenced your achievements. And we also had to recognise that, or I suppose provide a legitimacy and a currency to the badges by recognising that they were being used by institutes such as Microsoft, Mozilla, IBM, NASA and Disney. A number of the staff across the college, when we were carrying out the research and consultation, had indicated that they weren't necessarily interested in achieving a digital badge, but they were very keen on being recognised for their engagement within the wider ED&I issues throughout the college. So we took this dual approach whereby we did introduce digital badges, and these could be identified on your email signature or social media profile to enhance your digital identity. But we did back this up with physical badges for those that preferred to display their achievements in a more traditional way. And the realisation of that is that a number of our colleagues, both Graham and I included, do both. So we actually advertise our achievement of our Equality, Diversity and Inclusion badge on our email signature, and we wear our Equality, Diversity and Inclusion badge on our lanyard. So we introduced the ED&I badge itself on the 18th of December. We have 5 more badges that are launching throughout 2016, and they include the individual, partnership, integrity, honesty and transparency, excellence and achievement, and innovation and enterprise. The reason that we began with the ED&I badge was really down to the business model and legal drivers that Graham identified earlier. It's absolutely relevant to all staff throughout the college and indeed all students, and that we also wanted to drive the high visibility of ED&I throughout the college. But most importantly, we wanted to ensure that the ED&I badge and its development was part of a wider initiative and not simply an add-on to what was being done already.
Thanks, Douglas. So just to remind you of our values are presented on the screen just now. These were devised and communicated during the 2011 to 2012 academic sessions. After the values themselves were introduced, feedback from staff were looking at, well, values are all very impressive, but how do I actually enact the values? How do I live the values in my day-to-day behaviour at the college? So what we determined to do was we identified the need to conduct focus groups with students and staff to devise behaviours to actually bring the badges to life, if you like. So we worked with 10% of staff and over 100 students during focus groups, and we identified, developed and agreed a series of expected behaviours to support each of the values. And for ED&I, we identified to be fair, respect others and consider differences, and appropriately challenge unwanted behaviour. And this is why the pledge I presented earlier was relating to these behaviours. It's so that they're the embodiment of the actual behaviours for ED&I in the college. During 2015, we actually thought, well, then what are we going to do now? We have behaviours for each of the values. Staff are aware of what the values are. How are we actually going to bring the values alive again further? And it was at that point we, after determining that digital badges was a good opportunity, we again held focus groups with marketing department to determine buy-in for digital badges and also to determine buy-in for launching with the ED&I badge. And we were happy to say that there was an overwhelmingly positive response to digital badges and also the proposed criteria for the ED&I badge. In relation to the rationale for and development of the ED&I badge criteria, these came following our own experience working in the college, and I've presented these on the screen. First of all, my own experience of being ED&I manager, I had identified that there were small pockets, and I'm happy to say in the minority of cases, instances of inappropriate language and behaviour. I would be naive to think that our college would somehow be immune to external social attitudes in the rest of Scotland, but thankfully, they are isolated cases where staff have been using inappropriate language, expressing inappropriate behaviours across a number of protected characteristics. And obviously, this is about a balance between freedom of attitudes and belief versus the freedom of expression, and how, particularly at work, freedom of expression is actually restricted. Something else we'd identified was the need for change agents or champions for equality, diversity and inclusion to challenge these issues. We were aware that a number of staff wanted to become champions or challenge issues, but there was no real anchor, there was no real support mechanism structure in place. So again, this acted as a driver. Our college signs up for the Stonewall Workplace Equality Index and is also next month, actually it's just a few weeks' time, will be assessed against our journey towards investors in diversity during our on-site review. And for the Workplace Equality Index, organisations receive recognition if they have a scheme in place, which for Stonewall originally it was about straight allies, but it can be opened up wider to equality champions. And also for investors in diversity, having a structured system in place will increase buy-in, increase knowledge and demonstrate commitment. So really it was a win-win to actually pull something together which could help support both of these quality frameworks. We also had issues of equality data declaration across protected characteristics. Our college was a product of a three-way merger, and in two of those legacy colleges all protected characteristics were monitored at the point of merger, but one of the colleges didn't monitor two additional protected characteristics. So that meant that post-merger there were data gaps, and moving forward we determined that there were a number of areas of prefer not to say and also no responses. So for example, there was 36.9% prefer not to say for religion or belief and 41.7% prefer not to say for sexual orientation at July 2015. For gender reassignment, there was a high no response rate of 40.9%, and caring responsibilities, whilst I understand isn't a protected characteristic, it does support flexible working arrangements and informs ED&I action. There was a high proportion of no response for that also. This demonstrated that staff didn't fully understand the reasons for and benefits of declaration, and of importance, and really particularly interesting for me, this issue we didn't have this issue for applicants and for new starts. It was only characteristic of existing staff. Another issue we had, and another driver for the ED&I criteria, were the relatively low completion of the 3 online essential training modules we had in place for ED&I. 46% of staff had completed all 3 4 years after merger. Now, whilst that's a relatively high proportion, it still meant that almost, that actually over half of staff hadn't completed the module. Similarly, and related to that, there was an issue of currency with the online modules. They were arguably getting a bit tired, a bit old, very focused upon compliance, and there was kind of overlap and repetition across the 3 modules. So we thought it might be useful to look at actually overhauling the training module itself. And finally, there was an issue with understanding what ED&I actually meant, the differences between equality, diversity and inclusion, and an understanding of what mainstreaming meant in practice. So with that in mind, having these 3 criteria of completing a new module, providing your equalities information and pledging to be an active champion, we tackle these issues in a coordinated and incentivised manner. And that led to the introduction of these criteria. I'd like to hand you over to Douglas, who's going to speak to you just now about the development of the badge itself and support which was required across the college.
Okay, thanks, Graham. As Graham mentioned earlier, we took very much a kind of wider stakeholder perspective when it came to the development of both the badges themselves and the infrastructure that supported them. We had our change culture and communication team, which consisted of just over 20 colleagues from across the college, a fairly diverse range of backgrounds and experiences. And we tried to match the experiences and skill sets that they brought to make sure that the whole badge project and infrastructure was of the absolute best standard. What we did also recognise is that we had colleagues external to the college who could help us. So one of the very first things that we looked to do was to commission module itself and devise the content. Our equality, diversity and inclusion team very much drove the development of that content, and they worked closely with the external e-learning developers to make sure that the content not only reflected up-to-date legislation and expectations that were placed upon us by our stakeholders, but they also reflected our behaviours and values and position as an organisation. We commissioned the Monitoring Matters video and the Digital Badges video, and we done that again with external developers. We used 2 separate developers for that process, but what we did was we internally devised the script, and that was very much a collaborative process within the Change Culture and Communication group, where we looked for something that truly captured exactly the message that we were looking to put across. We devised the ED&I pledge. Again, it was based on behaviours. There was a fairly significant degree of input to the pledge itself, because I think initially there was some apprehension about, well, what does it mean to be a champion? What are the consequences of me not challenging unwanted or inappropriate behaviour, for example? And that was very much a process of working with colleagues to make sure that the language that was used was very positive, that it was very supportive, and that we were making it very clear exactly what taking the pledge did mean, and indeed what it didn't mean. For me, one of the most challenging aspects of the introduction of badges was looking at the digital and technical infrastructure that was required to support it. We did have to use 3 very separate systems throughout the process. And that gave our developers some mild headaches, but we were able to work collaboratively to come up with a solution whereby our staff intranet, our student virtual learning environment, and our HR systems were able to communicate and collate the badge data in one location, which then meant that we were able to issue the badge from our staff intranet. I've seen that Kenji in the comments had commented on the design and presentation of the materials, and I'll make sure to pass that on to our design team, Kenji, because again we recognised that we wanted the badge content to look very graphically good. We wanted it to be engaging, we wanted it to be interactive, we really wanted to capture our colleagues' attention, and I think that the quality of the content design really shines through as one of the key strengths of the initiative. Another thing that we're very aware that we had to do was to make sure that the communication went across the college, and we did host focus groups, we hosted open days, and we pushed communication through our email system. We also pushed it through our principals briefing and intranet channels. So we really ensured that we adopted a range of measures to raise awareness of the badges, to raise awareness of why we were doing them and what the benefits to staff were. And the very final thing that we'd done before launch was actually test it amongst the group, just to make sure it worked, and thankfully it worked exceptionally well. And our developers have done an exceptional job of making it as easy as possible. Kenji, I can answer that now. Kenji's asking why we included the year in the badge design. Kenji, that's very much looking at our college values as a whole, and recognising that our values and our behaviours are an iterative process. They're constantly in design, they're constantly in consultation. And what we were very keen to do was to say that if you were able to demonstrate your commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion in 2016, for example, that was not you signed off, that wasn't the end of it. This is very much an iterative process, and we recognise that our outlook, our vision, our values as an organisation will continue to evolve as we promote the ED&I agenda going forward. I'll pass you back over to Graham now.
Thanks, Douglas. So how are we going to actually measure success and demonstrate impact? We identified a number of KPIs in advance. So As of the time of actually devising this presentation, more than 15% of staff had achieved the digital badge in a 4-month period, and that's bearing in mind that the college was closed for 2 weeks over Christmas and teaching staff were off 2 weeks during spring break. Today it's just under 20% of staff who have achieved the badge, and we think that's an amazing success. For myself, I'm happy to say that declaration of equalities information has increased during the 4 months. So looking at gender reassignment, no responses decreased by 5.4% in the last 4 months, and this equates to 16.2% over a 12-month period, and the previous highest yearly change was only 6.7%. In relation to caring responsibilities, no response decreased by 1.9%, which equates to a 5.7% change over a year, and the previous highest yearly change was 5%. Religion and belief, prefer not to say, decreased by 2%, which equates to 6% over a year, and the previous highest yearly change was 3%. Sexual orientation, prefer not to say, decreased by 2.5%, which equates to 7.5% over a year, and the previous highest yearly change was 5%, which again, considering only 4 months has passed, that's phenomenal, and we look forward to seeing subsequent change over the coming months. In relation to completion of the new module, almost 20% of staff have completed the new module in 4 months, as opposed to 46% of staff completing the previous modules over 4 years. So having this anchor and structure for the digital badges has really increased engagement and buy-in of the ED&I module in general. In relation to staff survey, our staff survey goes live next Tuesday, and there are specific questions on values and behaviours in the staff survey, and there's a dedicated section on equality, diversity and inclusion, generally using the same questions in the last survey, which was conducted prior to the launch of the digital badge. So we'll be able to demonstrate the change in survey responses for those questions and arguably attribute some of that to the impact of the digital badge itself. We're also commissioning independent focus groups, which will be delivered by an independent market research company with experience doing social market research. We're going to have focus groups with people who have not undergone the badge, as well as people who have achieved the badge. We think having this level of independence will encourage people to be open, honest and transparent in their reasons for achieving versus not the badge. We're very keen to find out what people found the experience, the quality of the experience, how easy it was for them, what they thought about the content of the module, the videos and so on, and anything we can do to encourage people to actually complete the badge for those people who haven't done it already, but also lessons learned for the other 5 badges which we will be in the process of developing shortly. And I'd like to hand you over to Douglas, who's going to speak about factors to consider.
Okay, thanks again, Graham. And Kenji, we will get to your question in the comments at the end. Yeah, I mean, really it was just to offer an overview of the various factors that you may wish to consider should you be thinking about adopting a similar initiative within your organisation. Certainly our largest challenge, as I referred to earlier, was making sure that our electronic infrastructure and technological infrastructure was able to deliver the badges, and there was a wide range of considerations there, whether it was the virtual learning environment, the staff intranet, the system, the framework that we were actually using to develop the badges and to issue them. So there's quite a significant number of things that had to be kind of thought about, planned, and indeed developed in order to make this initiative work. The criteria for the badge was it was a valuable process in developing as a group, and we do recognise that the criteria for future badges is probably the thing that we're focusing on most as a development group just now. Certainly for the equality, diversity and inclusion badge, what we were keen to do is to find a balance between our legislative requirements as an organisation and our cultural aspirations in a way that was engaging and in a way that was meaningful and offered value to the staff within the college. Our senior management team buy-in was absolutely essential. So we identified a senior sponsor who was our Executive Director of People and Culture, and she really helped to guide us through the process of getting buy-in from our senior management team. And it was very much buy-in both for the resource and the cost of implementation, but also for the widespread adoption, because it's we recognised at the time that this was an initiative that had the potential to impact on every member of staff, and as we look forward, potentially to every student who comes into the college. We had a great degree of departmental support. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we had our IT teams, our ED&I team, marketing, design, corporate communications, and external agents all working together at the same time. And that was a challenging but very rewarding process. And I think that everyone who was involved in that process has been able to develop a wider appreciation for what goes into these types of projects and how to make them work. And we're certainly a stronger group, having been through that process together as we take on to our future badge development. And lastly, I would advise anyone who's really looking to introduce a similar pilot is to think about how you're going to pilot it, how you're going to gather feedback, who you're going to ask for feedback, and what kind of process of iterative development are you going to adopt to make sure that it's absolutely fit for purpose for your organisation.
Thanks, Douglas. We've also given you a PDF file of a digital badge canvas, which is a toolkit which you can use yourself to start mapping out your own digital badges. Really, that brings us to the end of our formal presentation, and we have our contact details listed on the page, and Douglas and I are obviously welcome to respond to emails or telephone requests should you have them, and I understand now that we'll be moving over to having a question and answering session. So I'd just like to thank you very much for taking the time to listen.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Graham's sentiments there. I'd just like to go back to some of the dialogue that is going on between Judy and Kenji. Kenji, you've been asking why we decided to indicate the year within the badge, and Judy's got it exactly right. What we were keen to do is to make sure that, again, we had a consistency through all of the badges, so with a view to the badges that we were introducing in the future, some of which would have a kind of annual input. Although you see the year in the badge itself, there is a quite significant amount of data that's baked within the badge, so it's like a digital stamp, and within that it says what you've done, who's issued it, exactly when you've done it, and a wide range of additional information. But what that means for us as an organisation is that we can start to track exactly when staff are engaging with ED&I learning materials, exactly when they last declared their equalities data, and then as we look forward, we can look to our kind of compliance requirements like health and safety, first aid, and so on, to make sure that we have a constant flow of continuous professional development throughout the college.
I'd just like to add something as well in relation to having a physical badge. I think particularly in relation to quality, diversity and inclusion, being an active champion is much more than ticking a box on a computer screen. It's about being a day-to-day role model, and staff have demonstrated commitment and eagerness to actually display their physical badge on their lanyard. And also, it's important for us to remember that a significant proportion of our staff don't use emails in the day-to-day business. People are catering assistants, janitors, reception staff, and if we only restricted it to having it about a digital badge, then it doesn't really align itself to quality, diversity and inclusion, and it gives them another opportunity to buy into it too. I think what we could do now is move on to the polls. I've come up with 3 questions and really am quite interested to see what the participants think. The first one really was, were you aware of the digital badges prior to this webinar? I'd be interested to see what people think about that.
Okay, while we are waiting on the results of that poll to come in, I'll just answer Susan's question. Susan, absolutely, what we were very keen to do with the badge criteria is to make sure that it was very easily measurable and identifiable, and the criteria themselves are baked into the badge. So when you do display it on your social media profile, or indeed push it to your badge backpack, then external organisations can go to that badge, they can find out more about exactly what you have done to achieve it, and they can actually get in touch with the college should they wish to do so, to get additional information on what achieving this particular badge actually involved. So the criteria is something that we spent a great deal of time, as I said earlier, trying to find a balance between kind of legislative obligations and user activity, but also in making sure that there was a demonstrated effort that was required to achieve the badge.
I'd like to move on to the second poll question, which is, I understand how digital badges could be used to support organisational aims.
Okay, and again, just to look at Sarah's question, or Sarah, sorry, have we reached some groups that are normally hard to reach? I think, well, you've certainly seen the data in some of the different areas that we've been able to reach within the college, and we've split that down by faculty and by support team. I would say, it varies from area to area, but certainly feedback from colleagues in the construction department, for example, who sit within my area, has been very positive. I think we've seen an increase in engagement with ED&I content in the construction area since the introduction of the badges, and as Graham mentioned earlier, we are now starting to get in touch with some of our janitorial and cleaning staff and raising awareness through e-learning content where perhaps we found that to be difficult in the past.
And now the final poll question, will you encourage your organisation to introduce digital badges? Judy, thanks for your comment. It very much, I think organisations in the past have perhaps not found more suitable communication platform tools with which to engage staff to declare their data. In relation to disability, dyslexia is a really good example of people perhaps not identifying that as being a disability, so therefore not declaring it, and perhaps not taking advantage of support mechanisms which would be in place. Also, just the whole rationale for collecting quality information, why we collect this information and what is done with it. We found that ourselves upon reflection that we weren't communicating that in a way that was accessible and easily understood by staff, so it was valuable lessons for us.